Welcome to the Empathy Evolution. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Amy Donegan. She's here with us today, and she was born and raised in Southern Illinois, but she's been a Florida resident for 22 years, and she's been married for nearly 3 decades, 27 years. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Gives me something to look forward to. She's a mother
Challenge. Challenge accepted.
A mother of 2 adult children, and she's also a Mimi, 2 granddaughter and 2 bonus boys. And she's been a nurse for almost 2 decades, 17 years, and an entrepreneur for 7. And she has some really awesome goals that we want to talk about today, and we're going to be covering a little bit of allyship. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
We're so thrilled. So Amy and I actually have a very similar passion when it comes to LGBTQ plus youth. We both have a high level of concern for homeless LGBTQ youth, knowing that this area, there is actually a higher than normal average of homeless teens that happen to be homeless based on their sexual orientation or sexual identity. And so Amy and I both have a passion to serve this exact population, because I don't believe that any child should have to wonder where they're going to sleep at night or how they're going to eat just based on who they've chosen to love or how they've chosen to live. Right. So Amy, will you tell us a bit more about your passion for that and some of your goals?
Well,
helping
a goal of mine is to, you want to impact as many people as possible, but sometimes you have to start small and grow from there. So I've long since wanted to have a home, a loving, accepting home for the LGBTQ plus youth that are homeless. Sometimes it is by choice they run away, and sometimes it is not by choice, that their family has disowned them, kicked them out. Along with that often comes physical, mental, emotional abuse. And as a parent, I just can't fathom that there's anything that my child could do or say or be that would make me not want to ensure their safety and well-being and love them. So that's a foreign concept to me. Now, I grew up in a small rural area, going to church. So, I grew up on good Christian values. But to me, at the very heart of family values, Christian values, is love, and loving our children is what, if we choose to have children, that is what we are tasked with.
Yes.
And to me, accepting them and accepting who they love.
Absolutely.
Is very important, because there's so many things in society that want to just nip at us and bring us down and wear us down. And if we want our children to succeed in life and truly be happy, and to me that is the measure of success as a parent, is if you have a happy child, is to instill in them a foundation of love and acceptance, and knowing that, no matter what they do, I'm always going to love you. You might get a lecture. Yeah, I might get a little ticked off at you. And I might tell you what to think about it. But bottom line, there's nothing you could do that would make me turn my back on you.
Yeah.
So, and as a parent, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
So I don't understand how this could happen.
So how did this passion grow within you? Because I feel like there's so many people that are maybe not in tuned with, the actual purpose of having an LGBTQ plus community. There's a community for a reason. And so how did you become a part of being an advocate for that?
I think going way back many years ago, my son was a toddler, and someone asked me out of the blue, it was a young person, she was in high school. She said, what would you do if your son came to you one day and said he was gay? And it was, he's a toddler. I never thought, that doesn't cross your mind. And so it really made me think. I was like, well, I couldn't imagine anything making me not love and accept my child. And so I said, well, as a parent, we kind of think this is the path our child would take, and this is how, their life will be, and we have expectations and we have desires and we have goals for them. But it really, in that moment, made me realize none of that I may have ultimately shapes this little person's future. It's what he wants, and who he is, and it's my job to make sure that he flourishes in that. Absolutely. And that I nurture that, who he is, not you living up to my expectations of what your life should be. Mm-hmm. Which I think is a fundamental problem across the board, regardless of socioeconomic status, cultural backgrounds, is expectations of parents on children. Yeah. And when they don't measure up to that, parents a lot of times think, I've failed somehow. That's not the only time, to me, you fail is when you fail to love and accept your children.
I think a failure is in the thing is you're not responsible. At the end of the day, your child's decisions and actions are their own, and they're responsible for those. Right. And so when you turn your back on your child, that action, to me, is where there is a failure, and that in society that would even be facilitated or supported. Now, I understand that there are different situations. We're going to have different people from walks of life, many different walks of life on the show, including people who have been in recovery and addiction. And so I think there's a difference between having something that is truly hurting the individual and hurting the family, and someone who just makes a decision that the family disagrees with. Right. And so how I kind of became aware of the true crisis that we have in homeless LGBTQ plus youth was having a very casual conversation with a friend of mine who was transitioning to a position at Children's Home Society. And she said, Becca, knowing that we feed kids, she's like, you would not believe the numbers. And so I said, well, what's going on? And she just said that the Hyatt in Santa Rosa County, where we live, so you're in Escambia, we're in Santa Rosa, but Santa Rosa, the highest concentration of homeless teens is number 1, LGBTQ plus, and number 2, teen mothers. And so, a lot of times there is a socioeconomic factor to it. Mm-hmm. There's also parents' lack of education and ability to cope when their child does something that they disagree with. And we are a highly religious area. Same as you, I grew up with I grew up in church, and I have a very close relationship with the Lord. And so from my perspective, I go, I don't care who you are. When we are dealing with teens out on the street, you should be concerned. Should not matter their sexual orientation. Right. The second thing is, as we talk about these staggering statistics of they are 30% more likely to commit suicide, nationally. And I go, I don't care who you are. When our youth are taking their own lives for feeling lack of acceptance or being ashamed of who they are and who they love, I said, I don't care what you believe. I don't care where you're from. That should be a concern to us all. So from my perspective, everything does start small. And I go, we can't necessarily provide housing. Children's Home Society does the best they can. Mm-hmm. They would totally benefit from a home like yours. I mean, I would love to connect to the two of you, because I think that something really great could be accomplished. But, in addition to being homeless, they often don't have consistent access to food. And so Food Raising Friends, my organization, we are going to be doing monthly food bags for all of the students that are identified homeless in Santa Rosa and Escambia through Children's Home Society. So we're partnering in that. And it's because the second I heard about it, I said, well, we've got to do something. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's just, I do... In the practice of expressing empathy, I do try to empathize with the parents, because I don't want to look at them and go, oh, you're so evil. Right. That they've been conditioned, or they've been told that this is a failure if their child chooses to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, or, feels that that's who they are as an individual. And the truth is so they fear being accepted by their peers and their religious community. And so I do offer them the empathy of giving them understanding before I judge. Right. But I hope that in seeing people like you and in participating in a program like ours, that instead of them feeling the fear of being judged, that they begin to give understanding to them, and that they are more willing to give understanding to their child about why they feel the way they do, why they identify the way they do, why they love who they do, which are all things that at the end of the day, again, I don't care what church you go to, these are our children. These are our
Right.
future, and it's okay to be different.
I think that's so interesting too, because I think for the show in general, and that's why I was excited to talk with you, Amy, is because you're in a medical profession, but you're also a parent who's passionate about this, and we also have so it's a different perspective on that particular situation,
Yeah.
right? And you work with nonprofits, and so you're really working through the crisis of what the result is of that.
Yes.
And then we're going to have some perspectives on the show of someone who's gone through a transition and what that looks like. And so I think the importance of talking with you is, I think we had talked earlier and you said something about like your why should make you cry, and it was something you heard. And I think that's, something I'd love to, I think even just what you've said already will affect someone in a way that makes them think maybe I can change my perspective
Right.
on, maybe I can be more empathetic to what they're
Right.
going through.
It's about education, and I think really presenting it as those of us who are allies. We're out in the community and we have friends, and when we have a conversation, I had someone, a friend of mine on social media, post that they didn't understand what was non-binary. They're like, I really don't understand what that means. And, okay. Now, I normally don't jump in on social media because you have to gauge it. Are people receptive to
Absolutely.
it? Are they not receptive? Are they
Absolutely.
trying to start an
Yes.
argument? But I knew this person, and I know her heart, and I really felt it was a matter of, I truly don't understand what this means. So
Right.
I commented and explained in layman's terms, because I'm no expert, but this is essentially, this is what it means, and I put it in terms of, our gender is not the same as the reproductive organs we have. Some people, I said, there are some women who are very feminine and some who are not feminine, and there are men who are very masculine and some that aren't. And so that's how they feel about, their gender identification. They're still heterosexual, and that's how they feel about it. But there are some people who are born, perhaps female, but identify more with, more of, for society's terms, masculine identity. And so they feel as though they're not really female. And so I explained it in terms whereas we as heterosexuals understand. Because I think a lot of it comes from we fear what we don't understand.
Yes.
And we're taught, society teaches us and has for many decades, to shun what we don't understand.
Which
I could quote Yoda on that.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's almost our protective instinct that if we don't understand and we have the fear of looking foolish or
Right.
looking stupid,
Right.
that we just shut it down because it's
Right.
better than humbling
Right.
ourselves and learning a new way. And I think that's where empathy kind of starts, is saying, I don't have to even agree to be willing to give you understanding.
Right.
I don't have to see it from your way in order not to judge you, but again, to offer you, to see the best in you, even if you're not being your best by my standard. And I know that's kind of hard to say. I also would say that it's such an interesting conversation sitting here because none of us are living a homosexual lifestyle or identify as LGBTQ+. And so it's interesting to just sit as a group of allies and say, we don't know. We don't know what it looks like through their eyes. We haven't experienced what they've experienced. We haven't seen people look at us with the eyes that they're looking at them with as they choose to come out, as they choose to go and live their life with the person they love in public, as they choose to transition. We haven't faced those things, and so we can only judge the world by that which was we experience and what we
Right.
see. And so we're sitting here as allies saying we want other people to just be willing to listen,
Right.
give understanding, give opportunity, despite the fact that that people of a different sexual orientation or
Right.
gender identity think
Right.
differently than us or live differently than us, because we don't understand it.
Right.
We're just willing to be an ally, being willing to be a listener and a learner.
Right. Well,
Sorry,
and I think
I don't think I spoke that perfectly, but
no, and I mean, but that's the whole point of this, right? Is like we don't know what we don't know, and I
Yeah.
think that what really breaks my heart into pieces is with that fear, what are people fearful of? Like, what are you actually afraid of? Because are you afraid that you may become very good friends? Does it challenge your own identity in some sort of way? Are you
saying people who are unwilling to be allies?
Right. Are
Okay.
unwilling to accept, like, if I'm a parent of some, a child that is homosexual or is non-binary, what are you fearful of? Why are you fearful to give love to someone who's different than you? And is that because, what's the root of that?
I think
right?
it all stems from insecurity. And it's not so much even an insecurity about your own identity. It's an insecurity of, this is going to push me out of what I know and out of my comfort zone, and that is terrifying to people. Because you have to step outside of that comfort zone, and you do have, if you truly want to be an ally, you're going to have to educate yourself on it, or be open to and receptive to what people have to say, and people are out there educating, but it's perceived by many that just absolutely want to stay in that comfort zone as they're trying to convert, or they're
instead of just being
it's really, it's an education process. It's, hey, we were forced to be in the closet for so long. We're here, we're busting that closet wide open and blowing it up because we're not going anywhere.
Right.
But if you want to understand, ask, educate. I mean, there's no reason. You don't even have to ask someone. There's so much information out there that you can sit in the privacy of your home and educate yourself on it.
Yeah.
And understand that you're not in danger. Your children are not in danger. And I think if from a very young age,
don't begin to change them, that your children could be in
right,
danger.
Right. If we don't teach children from a young age that you're going to encounter all sorts of people in your life that don't look like you, don't think like you, don't act like you. And if we don't teach them to be open to what each person they encounter, they say everyone is a blessing or a lesson. Yeah. Be open to meeting new people and broadening your horizons and learning new things. We travel to other cultures because we want to learn about other cultures, but there's so many cultures within ours we don't, that we're afraid of. And there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of, because just think that, I mean, to me, it's just more people to love. Like, why would you want to limit the number of people that you love,
Yeah, and I think there has been a positive shift in society. I think it is becoming more accepted, especially, as marriage equality passed. I think that was a huge step from a political standpoint. And also just offering them the chance to marry the person that they love. Although you still have people who fight back against that. And it's so interesting because coming from a background that was highly religious, I had to come to my own understanding and give myself some empathy myself and say, Becca, you're not dealing with people who have a different sexuality than you well. And I had to give myself a lot of room for growth. And the good thing is that that's okay as well. What I ask from the LGBTQ plus community is teach me and give me time and show me empathy and see the best in me, that I'm trying the best I can on my journey. But that in the same respect, that I offer you empathy that says, I don't have to understand or agree to respect you and to be willing to be your friend, to be your ally. I'm not going to do it perfectly all the time, but that you're, as a human, and your value has nothing to do with either of our sexualities, either of our genders, any position in society, that we have intrinsic value as a person. And so that mutual respect should just exist. And then in addition, we take the chance to show each other empathy as we learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And that's been huge for me, because I think I used to be very closed-minded And as I've grown up, and I think it's an interesting paradigm, and this is why you were talking about Facebook earlier. People are a lot more willing to draw that hard, fast line on Facebook that this is how I feel, and I would say this to someone's face. But when it's someone that you really love, say it was your best friend and they were in the closet and they came out to you, I think immediately, I hope most people would immediately soften themselves.
Right.
Because all of a sudden it's someone you love, and that changes how we feel, and then we become more open and willing because we love that person.
Right.
And I wish that we could just look at each other with love in the first place and give each other the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and when you think about, and when we were doing some research about how empathy works in the show and how it's, some people feel different ways. People think you're born with empathy, and based on the scientific research, you're inherently not born with it. But even at the age of like 18 months, you start to have these feelings of if someone hurts themselves, if you're raised in a loving home, you start to, want to take care of other people.
You understand why they're
if you're
hurt, and you want to
make people feel better, right? So even at the young age of like 18 months, you start to be able to inherit the concept of and learn the concept of empathy.
And as a parent, don't you just love that?
Yeah, and I feel like as adults, no matter what you've learned or you've gone through, you should be able to, no matter the human, right, be able to help someone just because they're human.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's the whole process of empathy. So, I think I haven't personally had to, I wasn't raised in any sort of way where there's any sort of biases, and so I think allyship is something that came easy to me, but there's a ton of stuff that I don't understand, which we're excited for the show because I know that, we have 7 different angles of perspective on how it affects people. And, one of my questions for you is that when you're thinking about empathy, one of the places that you practice that most is in nursing. And so when we're thinking about the nursing field and how that kind of intertwines with some of your passions, tell us a little bit about, that, how you go about advocating for that.
Well, at one time when I was looking into going to graduate school, I was thinking, I had an idea of what would make a great thesis. And I was like, okay, so when we do an intake or we do an assessment, we admit someone, what are the options? Male, female. I was like, but why are those the only 2 options? And in the day and age of electronic health record, you click a box, so you don't get to write it in. Mm-hmm. That was many years ago. Probably around 7 or 8 years ago. And now, in my job now, I look at a variety of different facilities, electronic health records, and the majority of them have specific language, not only identifying, but asking, you were born as, how do you identify? So healthcare has actually come a long way in understanding that we've moved way beyond male and female, that in order to treat the patient, the whole patient, is that we need to understand what their needs are, and that is based on, how they identify. So it's very important, as important as any physical ailment is, we need to make sure that we're doing the best we can to treat the whole person.
And so you feel that healthcare in beginning to be more inclusive of identifying someone's preferred gender or, versus their biological gender,
right,
or a gender identity. Do you feel healthcare is better suited to serve all people in that? Like you said, in terms of serving the whole person?
I think it's a start.
Okay.
But we're talking about basically informatics.
That's a word I've never heard before, so share.
It's essentially, informatics is in healthcare is, we're in the day and age of electronic health records. Well, someone has to determine what needs to be in that information and what do we do with that information. So someone decided, this is what we need to do, but this has very little to do with the entire culture of healthcare.
So you think it's just that initial...
I think that's starting in the right direction, but I have actually seen things in healthcare regarding LGBTQ, how things were handled, that I was mortified, absolutely mortified that that was the response. And so I know that fundamentally we have a long way to go, because until anybody could come in and feel as though they are accepted and that they trust the care they're going to receive, we're just not there yet. But we are moving in the right direction.
And so you feel hopeful.
I do. I do.
And
I think
and
it
that's
boils
a great
down,
way to.
it boils down to education.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who went and to the emergency room and told the registration person, I'm trans. And so the registration person came back with an ID band that had a different, gender on it of how this person was born, not how they were now. So that I felt like wasn't malicious. It wasn't judgmental. That registration person didn't know what to do with that information and tried to do the best they could. So it's a matter of education. We have to educate healthcare on what the different terms mean, and their role in caring for people.
Do you feel like there are resources for specific organizations? Like, I know that there's probably consultants and people that are in that field, but even in Pensacola, Pensacola is a very, we have a high population of LGBTQ community. Our community here is very strong, and we're creeping on, when we're recording this, we're creeping on Memorial Day, which is a huge celebration of the LGBTQ community. And I know there's
not just in our area, but people come from all across the country.
all over the country. And I think it's, and to kind of tell a little story about that, so they had the Stamp Film Festival, which, was born here, and the whole concept of Stamped was that, at some point in time, it was not accepted in this area. People kind of shunned it. You don't take your family to the beach, and which is silly to some people. And there was this whole movement of, whenever Memorial Day weekend happened, LGBTQ community took a stamp and put it on every dollar bill that they spent in town, and it totally circulated. It was everywhere because of how much they brought to the economic development of Pensacola.
I had no idea.
So it's, and there's just I feel like, it's moving in different parts of the country, and we're becoming more aware, even though it's a very religious town. It's not just about being accepting, it's about their business owners. There are, families, there are leaders of organizations here that are really doing wonderful things. And just because they have a different identity, should mean nothing. It should mean something, obviously, but
I don't think that the church or even, medical needs to view it as us versus them. It's
right, exactly.
We really need to start seeing ourselves as, and this is where empathy plays in. We need to start seeing ourselves as one, but we also need to give each other empathy as we go through the journey and say, we're not going, like I said, we're not always going to handle this right. We're not always going to do the right thing. And so I can give you empathy and you offer me empathy, because I'm going to misspeak and I'm not going to understand what your needs are. And you're going to be frustrated at me that I don't understand your needs. So then you give me understanding that I don't understand your needs.
Right.
And that's why I say empathy is the path to peace, because I go, that is where peace comes from, that this mutual understanding that we're on this journey together. But I really, I hope in my church, and I hope in other churches, that we stop seeing it as us versus them. Right. In regards to, there's no perfect people in the church. So even if it's this, there's this huge, great debate over, people in church say, homosexuality is a sin. Well, so is everything else. And
Gluttony,
so whether you think of homosexuality as a sin or not, you're at church with a bunch of other sinners anyways. And so it's not us versus them.
Right.
It should be an embracing of, where we don't need to judge each other. We just need to be in community with each other.
Right.
And give understanding where we don't understand, instead of putting harsh judgment on others. I don't know if you guys have anything else to say about that. But.
Yeah, I think what I was going with that is, that there should be more resources for folks that are, looking for things. And I know that we're coming to close on the podcast, but I'd love to get some feedback from you as, as you're moving on your journey to build this kind of sanctuary for LGBTQ plus youth. Do you know of any resources that would be helpful for them that exist as of today?
I think pretty much every community has its own smaller community, just put the, I mean, in today's day and age of social media, I mean, it's not hard to find it. If you really don't know where to find it, just look on social media. Reach out to someone. If you know someone that is gay or trans, reach out to them, because I can almost guarantee that they would be very open to a dialogue.
Right.
If you have questions, and don't be embarrassed to ask questions. We're not born with knowledge.
Yeah.
We seek it out. But the more we know, the more that it opens up our mind and realizes life as we know it is not the only way.
Right.
That there's other ways that people choose to live, and it may not be for me, and my life may not be for them, but there's no reason that we can't enjoy life together.
Right.
So I think if the resources are out there, you just have to know what's in your community. And if you happen to live in a community that doesn't have resources, internet, go to another, there's nationwide resources. And just start to just read more about it and understand why people are so passionate about fighting for these fundamental rights.
Right.
To just live life and pursue happiness like all of us want to do.
And if people would like to, jump on board and support you and hoping to see your vision for this home to come to fruition, can they connect with you on social media?
Absolutely. Facebook, it's Amy Blackburn Donegan. I don't have anything set up in social media because I'm
just a way to connect
this has just been something that has been heavy on my heart for a long time, and it's been a goal, and someday I will see it all come to fruition. And anybody that wants to jump on board and start a grassroots effort, absolutely reach out to me.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're here, Amy. Thank you for talking with us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
I'm going to look up some resources myself, because I always have the fear of ignorance, and so I'm going to actually find some resources to put onto our show notes and on our channel and stuff. But thank you so much for being here.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And
Thank you
I
so
love
much.
the conversation for this today. And so don't forget to check out the information in the show notes, and always remember the solution is the empathy evolution.